This is how I made my Ida Clawthorn cosplay, accessories, and staff for a cosplay contest. So this cosplay I actually made as part of my costume production course in college, and so I had like certain elements I had to do, but anyway, what I had to do was convince my teacher that I could actually do it. So I made a full cosplay breakdown, starting with images of references from the show and also real life reference of cosplayers. Then creating a text sketch, which it just outlines all of my sewing lines and like fit lines and all of this. I then also had to analyze her environment, like where the house is, the boiling aisles, stuff like that, to see how that would affect her clothing, because Ida definitely does not take care of her clothing. So I decided that the boiling aisles area they live in is probably like deserty, so they'd be very dirty, sandy, and also Ida definitely doesn't take care of her clothes, so she's definitely burned them. So I decided that this high slit in her dress is definitely like from an explosion, so it has all burn marks, and all on the hem is all destroyed because she doesn't care. So then I had to get my teacher to approve my cosplay in the first place. She did. So then I started patterning. I personally like draping my stuff on the mannequin and then putting it together and fitting it onto myself. Then once I was happy with the fit, I transferred all my pieces onto paper and started cutting it out. I chose to make this costume out of cotton, literally the most plain cotton, because I had to dye it for this assignment, and cotton is what I learned how to dye, so I didn't have to bother messing with other fibers. I sewed it all together. It was pretty simple, just princess seams and a collar, bodice lining, and then the underskirt, which the underskirt is what I'm gonna be dyeing. I think I have clips later that explains how I actually put this thing together. But yeah, since the bodice is getting lined, I don't have to worry about fraying and stuff, which is good, but that means the skirt can and will fray. And so I just serged the skirt half of everything, running the serging off at like the waistline. And this is the progress so far. So now I'm gonna dye the underskirt part. I fully tested a bunch of different colors of dye and mixing dye for this, mostly because it was part of the assignment. But I decided on mostly black dye and then like a tiny bit of red or like maroon or something. I did this like 2 years ago, so I don't really remember the actual proportions. I then added salt to fix the dye of the fabric. And yeah, it's for school, so I had like a whole dye studio that I was doing this in. And I heated up my water in the vat because I was doing a fair-sized piece of fabric. Poured in all my dye and my fixative and put my fabric in and then just let it sit. I ended up, if I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure I had to add like a ton more black dye because it wasn't dyeing dark enough for me. But then I also got kicked out because it was like 11 p.m. and the school kicks you out at that time. So I just pulled it out and threw it in the dryer. And now with my fabric fully dyed, I can finally actually explain with visuals how I'm putting this together. I have my dyed underskirt being attached at the waistline to the Spider-Man lining because I like Spider-Man, and then that lining just gets bagged out in the armholes to the actual dress and it just hangs lower. I hope that makes sense. After adding the collar, the dress is officially fully constructed, so now we start on breakdown. I'm basically just actually cutting into the dress and removing pieces to make it look disheveled and ripped and gross. I'm using straight up scissors, a sanding block, and I think also a wire brush. They all kind of just break down the fibers in the fabric to give it that distressed look. I then also airbrushed this cosplay because the school had an airbrush, so I had to use it. You expect me not to? But anyway, I did samples for literally everything I'm doing on this too. I airbrushed layers of burn colors. So I started with like a orangey sienna color and then added light brown, dark brown, and then I went in with black on a paintbrush to literally just like dry brush the edges of the distressed areas. I also went in with the airbrush in like the body contours to give more dimension, as well as highlight, or like I guess low light like low light the wrinkles in the fabric and stuff like that. And this is how it looks so far in this very awful angle of the fitting mirror. Now on to the accessories. Ida has a lot of accessories. I started with her gemstone on her chest. I made it out of foam clay, carved out the center so it would dry properly, and then I painted it inspired by a jasper crystal because I thought it would be cool if it looked like a crystal. And I just painted it with acrylics and then put a felt back on it with some, what are those things called? With jump rings to attach it to a necklace because I didn't want it to be permanently attached to the dress. Ida also wears gold ball earrings and a matching gold ring. So I decided the easiest way to get a good circle that all matched would be to use these Easter eggs, because I guess it was Easter when I made these. I just filled the bottom half of the egg with foam clay until it dried, and then I popped them out and got like this mostly round shape. I primed them with a mix of craft glue and water and then painted them with acrylics. I used gold and then a mix of some browns to give it a bit of shading, make it look a little bit more 3D. So that is how the gold jewelry looks. I also do not have my ears pierced, so I turned the little gold earrings into clip-ons. I literally just super glued a clip-on earring onto the back side of the gold ball. And then I did literally the same exact thing with the ring, with a gold ring that I just had. And for the last little detail, Ida's golden tooth. This is how I make like all my fang style teeth. I have these thermoplastic beads. They soften in hot water, so I have a cup of boiling water, or boiled water. I just dropped like maybe 5 or so beads into it and then pulled them out with the spoon. I kind of squished them around a little bit. I dried off my tooth that I wanted it to fit on, and then I just shoved the beads on there and like try my best not to slobber everywhere and shape the tooth into the right shape. I did have to reheat by water and like try like 2 or 3 times melting the beads again to get the right shape and fit and everything. It's a very finicky process, but it looks pretty good when I actually got it. I also used nail polish to color this. Nail polish is not the right choice because it's going in my mouth. I used a mix of gold and like nudish brownie colors, like using the same kind of shading techniques as I did on the gold jewelry. Literally use a different paint. I don't really know what paint. Oh, I also used acrylics. I don't really know what paint would have been better, and I guess like the sealant would be the biggest concern. But yeah, I used nail polish, and you probably shouldn't. But it looks good, and I'll suffer the consequence of eating nail polish, I guess. I always need a prop when I do a new cosplay, so we are gonna make Albert, Ida's magic staff. I'm using a piece of PVC tubing for my base, I'm making it somewhat collapsible, so I'm cutting 2 separate pieces, which I honestly have no idea how long they are, but put together they're about like my shoulder height. Apparently I was doing this in the middle of winter, but I cut the PVC on a table saw. I then wrapped the entire length of the PVC in, like, I don't know how thick this foam is. It's just like dollar store craft foam, like from Michael's. I just contact cemented it around the PVC, and I did that so that I would be able to carve grain texture with the X-Acto knife into it. Blasting the now carved foam with the heat gun creates like these divots where the foam's been cut, so I used that method to create grooves for the wood grain. And I should have done this earlier, but then I used a mix of caulking, which wasn't as easy to use, and foam clay, which was much easier to use, to fill in the cracks of the foam, which also ended up filling the cracks I made for the wood grain, which is why I should have done it before, but whatever. Okay, here's where I show you how it's collapsible. I have the 2 pieces, one end is larger than the other, and the PVC just comes like that, so I just fit it into itself. There you can see the PVC, just raw, I guess, with the wider end. I decided to cover the staff in like tree knots, like the really big trees have knots in them. I just used foam clay and created knots. And at the middle of the staff where it separates, I wrapped it in green tape, like just painter's tape, and this is the important part, I used the foam clay and like the tree knots to sort of smooth together the 2 pieces and try and make them look as if they aren't 2 pieces and there's not just like a giant bump where the PVC gets wider. It was also very important to me that I would be able to slam this on the ground because I want to. So I used just literally cut-offs of Warbler that I had and created a rounded bottom out of it. It was a pain and I probably burned myself, but now after having it for 2 years, it's literally fine. I slam it on the ground so hard and I lean on it and it's perfectly fine. Just the paint chips a little bit, but that's literally the least of my problems. At the top of the staff, I created like a little triangle cone bit for Owlbert because I thought it'd be fancy. The way I made Owlbert, however, I stacked 3 layers of XPF foam, which is, I think it's insulation foam. I created a paper outline of what Owlbert is supposed to look like, and I traced that onto both sides of the stack of foam, and then I just carved the foam. I put a saw bit on my X-Acto knife, which was very helpful. Sawing the foam is so much easier than trying to cut through the foam, and I started by just getting rid of all the big pieces and then trying to create the rough shape of him and then tried to make him round as one does. Now to add a little bit of detail. Safety first, I used a Dremel to smooth all the edges on Albert because carving it left him quite rough. And then I used the Dremel as well to carve out kind of his face shape, which is hard because I don't think I had the right drill bits for it. But it still worked, and then I used clay foam to just go in again and smooth everything out. I think I also added his nose back on, but yeah. Sorry, his beak. I added his beak back on with foam clay. So I finished creating all of it, so now I'm priming. This is the same primer I used for the jewelry. It's just craft glue and water and a bit of black paint. I did like 3 or 4 layers on each piece of the staff, the bottom, top, and then Albert. And then I just painted everything a base layer of brown, and it's dollar store acrylic paint. And then I went in on Albert's face to give him the lighter patch on his stomach and his face. And then again, just literally in his face, not including his eyes and beak, putting in an even lighter shade of brown, like tan khaki kind of color. And then I went in to shade everything using, I don't remember if it was acrylic paint or oil paint, but I put linseed oil in it so that it would water it down and make it more like malleable, and like it would go into the crevices, and then I could wipe away all the high points, stuff like that. Used that mixture on the staff itself as well, putting it into all the tree knots and texture and everything. I dry brushed tannish color on all the high points of the staff as well. And at the top of the staff where Albert connects to the staff itself, I added a like gold decoration bit. It's literally just gold lines with gold acrylic paint. I put it on Albert and the top of the staff and also the bottom. And with it finally finished, I sprayed the whole thing with clear matte varnish. I did have to hang it in a tree in the middle of winter, but it was fine. Now this is the method I used to attach Albert. At first I was going to use magnets. I had a magnet in the bottom of Albert and in the top of the staff. The magnets were not strong enough because I wanted to be able to swing this thing around and pretend I was doing magic. So the solution I came up with is, first of all, get rid of all the foam that I stuck onto it with contact cement, and then I literally just used a screw cap from I think it was Milk. It happened to be the exact same diameter as my PVC pipe, so I was able to slip the bottom half of the carton on over top of the PVC, and then I just contact cemented the screw cap into the bottom of Albert. I do think I had to fill in like some spots so that it wouldn't slip around, but it worked really well and I could just screw it on and off. Are you guys ready for the reveal? This is the full cosplay. This was the first time I put on the full cosplay, so I did improve like my wig and stuff, which also I am currently realizing I didn't film any of the wig, so sorry. But here's a little demonstration on how the staff actually gets put together. There's my little Albert. I put the 2 staff pieces together, connecting in the middle. And then Albert gets screwed on. And then I get to go be a little witch. A mischievous witch! Now the thing you've been waiting for, our masquerade performance. I've tagged my friend who I competed with in the comments. This was at Anime North 2023.
All the way from the Boiling Isle, Rain Whispers and Ida Clawthorne. That was entry number 10, raven.glayster and Trashy Caitlin. Ida and Rain from the Owl House.